I love this guy.
Why, thank you, boys. Well, hello, and welcome to the Rock and Roll Podcast. I am your host, John Harris. On my right-hand side is my right-hand man, Gabriel. And today on the Rock and Roll Podcast, we have On Hollow Ground, who has a new album called Blood is Blood, which was released on July 17th. Right now I'm being joined by Jack and Chris. Then we can have the Jack and Chris morning show. And
you're goddamn right.
We're going to share some information on what the band's got going on. Obviously, at the time of recording, we're just nearing the release of Blood is Blood. So, boys, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having us.
Yeah, man. Thanks.
Absolutely great to have you on. Now, the first track we're going to chat about is Our Lives, The Days of Our Lives. Best show ever on TV. And I'm curious, Our Lives, what is this track about? Is it your lives as a band? Is it something inclusive, like even my life? Is it something we're all going through? What is Our Lives?
Yeah, so, to explain Our Lives, I'd kind of have to dip into the entire album. So the entire album is set around the passing of my father. We didn't have a fantastic relationship and stuff, and we, had some real ups and downs. But Our Lives really focuses on... it's always quite hard to talk about it, really, but Our Lives is sort of like... You said that it's inclusive. I'd like to say it was, yeah. It's, how can you try and overcome everything that you're faced with, when you have a parent who isn't, particularly a great influence on you, and sort of fighting and trying to overcome that. And that's what Our Lives is all about, really. And the whole grief situation that, I experienced through that. So, yeah, I feel like I've done a really bad job of explaining that, but it's always quite hard to sort of pinpoint one track because the entire album is such, it's the whole stages of grief, the entire, the backlog of the whole history of between us. So we sort of blend themes within each track.
Yeah, something that I had made a note on the track was it seems like it's not even like a simmering angst or even really a developed angst, but there's some kind of angst that I get in Our Lives that seems like trying to get something out and then choking on it, and it almost seems like an angst that almost feels incomplete, and it kind of sounds like, from what the track is about, that explains really a whole lot, and I'm curious if musically that's what you guys had set out to do, was write a song about a relationship with a parent that isn't going so well, and I think a lot of us can relate to that. I can certainly relate to that.
Totally. Like, one of the, when I had to write up some stuff for Spotify, we sort of put a little commentary on every single track that we do. And one of the main things was that I put down there that, this sort of contains some of the rawest vocal tracks that I've ever laid down. For this one especially, it's probably the most emotional takes I've ever produced, and I'm glad that so thank you very much for saying that. I'm glad that the anger and the the real angst comes through on that one. And yeah, like you say, there's a massive mixture on this track as well, just musically, between all the heavy breakdown sections, and then you've got this sort of, I don't know, this juxtaposition where you have this bridge with this beautiful female lead line. So yeah, there's so many themes going on in there. I know what you mean. It just sort of feel sort of unfinished in ways, and I kind of like that because it's unfinished business to be explained on the rest of the record, because it's actually the very first track on the album. So I sort of feel like if you're thinking that, then we've sort of done our job a little bit.
Well, it's funny because, obviously from a genre perspective, I kind of have some expectations with metalcore, but at the same time, your guys' unique take on it, at least with this particular track, is, as I'm listening to it, even as I'm watching the music video, it's like, come on, man, get it out. You can get it out. Don't be so angry about it. Just get it out. That's kind of how I'm taking it. It's like, especially, Chris, from your perspective, when you were writing the track, did the lyrics influence it at all? Or musically, how did you guys get even the music to sound like, come on, get it out. Don't just be so angry. Like, get it out.
Well, really from a studio perspective, laying down these bass tracks and hearing it all come together. I mean, there's like certain points in in Our Lives when the breakdown hits, you're really feeling that anger and frustration that Jack is feeling. I mean, it's sort of like a window into his feelings, really. And to see Jack, really delve into really personal stuff and, come across, like you said in that track, it's like, so we've done our job, really. It's done its job.
Yeah. Now, you mentioned something about the breakdown in particular. You mentioned, the female voice. What was the inspiration for doing that?
Well, we kind of wanted something that was completely, not in our wheelhouse, really. Like, we've never really had anything sort of angelic in any of our tracks. Sure, we've had, like, clean singing and stuff, and our other guitarist, Ryan, sort of leads up that stuff. But we just wanted something that, completely came out of, something completely different for us. And with the whole, like, detachment of me and my father now, with him being, vibrating somewhere on this earth and, his everlasting energy out there sort of thing. Mm. We felt like getting a female lead vocal in there to sort of, I don't know, like, to try and make it sound as angelic as possible, sort of like, I don't know, it's kind of like a voice from the heavens. It's like that sort of inner monologue that, I had with myself when, I was going through all this grief, and I was saying that now you're gone, it's time for my life to go on. And, all this grief that goes through you when you lose a parent. And just to keep remembering that, yeah, he's gone, but he's still here. And if he was here, he'd be saying those words to me. So my dad's not a girl, but we wanted... well,
that's good.
A female. My mum's a girl, like. But we wanted that sort of like angelic female vocal to just come through and just, sort of a voice from the heavens, mate.
And also, like,
go ahead.
And to add to musically as well, like going into the studio, because usually it was recorded in Ryan's bedroom, like the last few EPs. So going into the studio, we didn't really want to limit ourselves to what we could and couldn't use. So using something like, a female voice really broke up the track in a really nice way, I thought.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Now, when it comes to the music video, which we had chatted about briefly, but I'd like to chat about it a little bit more. And for those listening who want to check out the music video, you can do so by going to today's show notes at www.therockmetalpodcast.ca. And I mean, it could just be a typical, band playthrough video, but a couple of things that I thought were really cool was a lot of constricting scenes. You got the drummer in the hallway, and the whole time I'm thinking like that's really tight. Or Chris, you're like trying not to hit the urinal. Well, I think that's a urinal. Jamming next to a urinal, like, oh, nobody's gonna see this. No, I saw it, and I went, ugh.
It's an accurate representation of my playing, to be honest.
I'm trying to figure out what kind of guitar you have. Ibanez of some kind. RG, or it looks like a soloist?
So it's an RG. It's what's called an Axion label. I think they brought it out pretty recently. I think it's to replace the Iron label.
Oh, okay.
It's purple and gets me noticed. So it's it's a good guitar, to be fair.
Yeah. Boom. No amps or anything, which, usually we would see that, but there's no amps or anything. And then, Jack, you're just the only member of the entire band hanging out in, like, a bedsheet or something.
You're the only lead vocalist.
What was that, sorry?
What did you say, sweetie?
You're the only lead vocalist, which I like.
There usually only is one lead vocalist. That's why it's a lead vocalist, son.
Well, I'm glad we're all learning today.
Yeah, beautiful. And on lead bass.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And on lead drums.
So
yeah, like the whole bed thing, I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory, really. But, when you go through that kind of thing, you do spend a lot of your time lounging around the house and, going through this sort of fit of depression. And I kind of wanted to create that real divide between the band going on about their lives all around us our lives. You see that? You see how I did that? Going on about their lives around us, and sort of create this separation where I was in bed still, and they were on their feet and playing their hearts out still. They weren't going through the same things, but they were sharing that experience with me the entire time. This entire band is so close to me, and like we're all best mates. Like Chris and the rest of the band as well. They all attended my dad's funeral. So in a way, we did all kind of go through all of this together, and I know that they grieved for me as well. And I think a lot more comes through in that video than we necessarily planned or expected to. But when I watch it back, I sort of see that support that they give me as well. And like there's a scene where all the hands are pushing me and pulling me in different directions, and I take a lot of that from that as well. Yeah.
I'm looking at some of the lyrics here you guys have on YouTube, and I thought there was a line in there that you did, Jack, that could be just cheesy rhyming, but it actually turns out very well. That you did me in, geez, you made me stumble, but you could never make me crumble, made me humble, withstood rumble. Somebody's been listening to a lot of Jay-Z lately. More fight than you ever know. But I just wanted to let you know that was actually really quite talented, in my opinion, because that could have easily have just been nonsense rhyming, but instead you took it and really said something there. And to me, anyway, that seems like a very pivotal point in the lyrics. Am I right?
100%. And that's, it's over the heavy section there. And like you said, that's really where it takes that angry turn. And going forward, we're contemplating experimenting with more rhymes and like a lyrical flow like that. And one thing that I struggle with when listening to rap, a lot of rap music and a lot of hip hop music, is how disingenuous sometimes it sounds. And if I was going to do a section like that, I just wanted to make sure that everything that I wrote down, everything lyrically, actually meant something to me and wasn't just posturing and wasn't there just for the sake of having a nice little cool rhyme in there. Just to be honest with it,
Yeah, absolutely. Now, speaking of more sheer honesty coming from boys standing on hollow ground, that sounds dangerous. I thought WMD was going to be weapons of mass destruction, but that just shows what generation I come from. So WMD, waste man down. What does that even mean?
Right.
Is that like a garbage man? I'm confused. I need answers. Why are we angry about the garbage man?
It sounds so like, we're laughing because it's an inside joke for really us. So we have a group chat, and I can't remember one day, I think Jack had, I don't know, something wasn't going our way, probably a Google ad or something. And Jack just put WMD and, really,
yeah, I was kind of saying that our careers were just like a WMD. Like if this is a weapon of mass destruction, it's all going to explode in our faces, and then
yeah. And I just uttered those words like, oh, is it like a waste man down or something like that? And it just sort of stuck. But it was a working title for a while, wasn't it?
Yeah. And waste man. I don't know if it's sort of translated that well over in Canada, but it's quite a big thing in sort of in like grime culture in England. If you're a waste man, you're a bit of an idiot. So that's kind of, it's not about trash guys or bin men or anything like that.
Yeah.
It's just about morons.
Just about morons. Pendejos down for our Mexican listeners.
Love it.
Yeah, fantastic.
I'll get that from you.
Wear a t-shirt. Don't be a moron. Friends don't let friends be morons.
Not.
Exactly. We started a new thing here on the Rock Little Podcast. Now, specifically as well, when we get to the music video, we see, Jack, that you're on the bed again, but this time you're getting up. Is there some kind of symbolism to this, or are we connecting music videos?
Yeah. So we shot both of those in the exact same venue, actually. But we chose that venue because we knew that we had a lot of different rooms to play with. With Our Lives being the opener on the CD, we needed to take that next track and into WMD and sort of, we kind of wanted to connect the videos and be able to sort of see the difference in style and the difference in not only the presentation of the band, but, the presentation of me and my mood and how that changed through it all. So in Our Lives, it's very emotional. It's, there's scenes in that where I'm, almost like on the brink of tears. It's very raw. So getting out of bed and getting up and thinking, no, I'm not going to put up with this anymore. It's sort of like getting into that angry state and moving on to the aggressive side, the anger, the angsty side, all the teenage angst that WMD brings. So yeah,
I don't know. It's kind of funny you mentioned teenage angst. It's interesting. Like, at what point do you go from pop punk angst to like metalcore angst? Like, you got to be like, I don't know, like 25 or something, and you're like, man, I gotta take my teenage angst and listen to metalcore. That's what I gotta do.
Exactly.
I mean, yeah, Jack remembers being a teenager about 45 years ago.
The funny thing is, you mentioned that, and I just finished reading an article in some psychological, is it a science magazine or a psychology magazine? I can't remember exactly off the top of my head which magazine, but I just finished reading an article about people not letting go, actually, of their teenage angst, and the remarkable notion that you have this teenage angst for like 5 years at max. It's like 1 to 5 years that you actually have this teenage angst, and there's grown people at 40, 45, 50 who can be triggered within a second back to this teenage angst, and the way that they lash out and react to people in situations is basically them being immediately brought back to being under somebody else's control and feeling that it's not fair.
Wow, that's quite like a primal urge, isn't it? It's like a caveman sort of thing. Troglodyte business.
Yeah, basically. So anyway, when you mentioned that, I thought that was, it just kind of brought me to that and thinking of that. But definitely some cool stuff. Chris, I was waiting for you to crash into that jukebox, but you didn't. So you guys are remarkable at being able to dance in tight spaces.
Yeah, well, when you're used to playing stages that really confine us to being really close together, you learn how to, dodge stuff.
It was very cool. Now, Blood is Blood. We've got, I think it's 9 tracks? Yeah, 9 tracks. And you mentioned that there's a theme that's going through the album. You kind of mentioned it as like stages of grief in a way. So I guess my first question is, these 2 tracks we chatted about today, Our Lives and WMD, is this what we should expect from Blood is Blood? Or maybe, I guess, just take us a bit more through what we should expect. Is it like a chronological sequence from beginning to end with the stages of grief? Or is there a story maybe that's being told?
Yeah, I mean, like Jack said from the beginning. I mean, from a lyrical standpoint, of obviously dealing with the passing of his dad. But when you look into each track, when you look at it as a collection, it never really. I mean, personally, from my point of view, it never seems like it's sticking to a certain point. It's always got each track could stand on its own, if you will. Yeah, so with like say Jack, like a question to you, like do you see it as that as well? Do you see it as like a progression as well?
Yeah, well, I think that
in some ways,
it's hard when you. Yeah, I think it's always hard when you write an album, isn't it? Because when we first put these tracks together, we had no idea what order they would go in. So, having a start point of, the passing and everything, and then ending the album with like this big, resolution and, everything's okay. Within those tracks, there is some resolution and there is some ending and some finality, but it does come sporadically. It comes in different forms on many other tracks. So it's quite hard to sort of make that linear chronological progression throughout the album, especially when you've just written these songs and then it's time to put them in order on an album, and which track goes better after which track. It's trivial
even
things.
From like a musical standpoint, like if you're feeling a particular way on a day and you're writing lyrics for it. I don't feel it's healthy to confine yourself into just a box of how you're feeling, how it should lead. If you're feeling it wants to go a certain way, I think really you should let it go that certain way.
Yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of the music does that as well. I know that when we were making Broken and People Never Learn, which are 2 other singles from the album as well, they're a lot more sort of like hip-hop led and like a lot more beat orientated. And listening to Our Lives and WMD, you wouldn't necessarily get that, but I suppose it kind of ties into the sporadic and spontaneous nature of grief, and not everything is linear. Grief isn't something that I know in the beginning of this I said the stages of grief, but you dip in and out of anger, you dip in and out of sadness, and you dip in and out of depression, not progression.
That too, Jack.
You do. Just like I just did then when I regressed. I think that if you were just to listen to WMD, Wasteman Down, about the Bin Men, and Our Lives, tune into Blood is Blood, because you're going to get that and a whole lot more as well, and a lot more experimentation, a lot more emotion, and a lot more teenage angst.
A lot more teenage angst.
Teenage kicks, baby. Teenage
kicks. Beautiful. I'll bust out my Avril Lavigne posters and we'll go to town. Avril Lavigne does metalcore. That'd be fantastic.
Oh man, can I trade you your poster for my Gwen Stefani poster?
I think we could totally do that.
It's in the mail.
Oh man. Beautiful. All right, now with lockdown and quarantine and everything else, I'm going to imagine that because this album is being released kind of in the middle of summer, is this what you guys have been up to, or is there some other COVID-19 updates that you guys wanted to chat about?
Sorry, it's put me on the spot. I mean, really, with the whole quarantine thing that's obviously happened to us is it definitely sucks, it really does. But originally we had a release date a little earlier, but with obviously everything that has gone on, we decided to push it back till around, obviously, 3 days from now, basically. We just felt that we couldn't hold on to it forever. We really wanted to push it and get it out there.
I think as well that, we'd have had the freedom of getting out there and playing shows and sort of ramping up to it and spreading the word, through live music. But this time we thought, we'll postpone the date a little bit just so we can start funding it online, and sort of make a bigger push that way, which is something that, we're not massive fans of, to be honest. We do sort of struggle with that kind of thing, and we don't like the sort of the nature of it all. We do prefer to be very much out there on the road and playing as many shows as we can. In the first sort of 2 years of the band, we'd clocked in over 200 shows, and that just sort of shows what kind of a band we are. We're not.
It's been a weird transition for us, hasn't it?
Yeah, totally. And, just not even being able to get back in that practice space. I know that, my day-to-day is a little bit more miserable because, we can't get on that stage as regularly as we'd like to, or even get in a practice space together. So, yeah, it is tough. And one of the main knocks about it all is that, we normally have a release show at one of our local venues in Leeds, and generally we produce some really great numbers and have an amazing night. It's a whole party thing, and the guys go out afterwards and stuff, and we socialize. So I don't know when we'll be able to actually get to that point, but we're definitely looking forward to it, and we just hope that people are still spinning and looking at the CD, by that time as well. So fingers crossed.
Yeah, and plus a summer release as well. Obviously, it's a great time for new music to come out. Obviously, it would have been festival season. Now, obviously, that's all been cancelled. Download has been cancelled postponed till next year. So we really thought that summer would be an excellent time to really have some full attention on it.
We'll be able to get in there with all the summer hits like Will Smith and stuff as well, won't we? And sort of,
Oh, man, I feel sorry for Will Smith right now.
Will Smith and Jazzy Jeff and that, be awesome.
Beautiful. All right. Well, Jack and Chris, unless you guys wanted to bring up anything that I missed, I just wanted to thank you for coming on to the Rock Metal Core Teenage Angst podcast.
Well done. Okay.